rods are amazing. Anybody that's watching this right now is going to know that like it's something that you're not just into, you know, you don't just look at them and like, oh, I guess I'll do this like to pass some time. They take over your life and you love them for some reason that's more than just like it's a car. It's art, it's also practical, it's impractical. It's just so much of your personality wrapped into one thing. I grew up around cars with my dad. He was into muscle cars. That was the kind of the cars that he was into, and that's what I remember when I was little, when I was kind of, you know, a teenager, and it's like kind of searching myself for, you know, what kind of muscle car was I into. I started going to car shows and looking at car magazines, and I was at a show, and then this like traditional hot rod pulled in, and it was kind of, this is early on, like when traditional hot rods weren't huge. Like it was like the only one I'd ever seen, and it was loud, and it was little, and it was low, and it was so pissed off looking, and it blew my mind. I was like, this guy's like the king of the hill, and he doesn't even care. And the magazines were not showing these cars, and so like it was a struggle to find it. Like I kind of, you know, I went and I found this little Model A, and I bought it, and it didn't work. It didn't feel right. You know, I parted it out. I moved from where I lived in California to Texas, and that's when I started to meet, like, you know, the people that really influenced me. I remember selling the last thing I had from that thing, which was a set of wheels and tires, to my buddy Norm Jones. And he's like the godfather of hot rodding in Texas. He's been doing it for 50 years, and he sort of like was, you know, listening to me, like when I was telling him like what I wanted. That's when like kind of everything changed. I ended up buying the body for this car off of Norm, and it was really rough, but he gave me this like amazing price because he just wanted to see, like, you know, a young guy go off on it. Brought it over to my house, and from then on I was obsessed. One of my best friends, Mark Ford, was at the same time building a hot rod too, and kind of in the same position I was in. He was like learning as he went.
Hey Mark, I just videotaped it.
I just pulled up and I was like, where the fuck is Paul? Oh, he's driving his hot rod.
Really good friend Bob Bleed moved from Wisconsin down to Austin, and I got introduced to him, and like it just all came together, and I instantly knew exactly like who I was and what I wanted. From then on, it was just like, I have to make this car, and I have to make it this certain way that appeals to me. It's like some hot rods are just brute power. They're badass. They're big blown Hemis, and they're not flashy. They're just loud and fast and pissed off, and they're amazing, and I love those things. But at the same time, there's this other side of it. There's like this elegance, and you build this car to be beautiful and elegant, and at the same time badass and loud and fast, you know. And the difference would be like these like little pissed off show cars that are like, you know, they're like James Bond, you know, they're elegant and deadly, but proper or something, you know. and that like really appeals to me, kind of the contradiction with some of that. This car kind of feels like a tuxedo, you know. I just took a lot of little details I saw off of cars I really liked in the old magazines, and kind of put them all together. And I figured when it felt like too much, I'd stop, and it never really felt like too much. Walter, Darth Walter. I'm a geek. I'm a Star Wars nerd. I like to read a lot. It was one of those things where all my friends were naming their cars. They had all these really cool names, and you know, every magazine you open up has a rad name. And so when I started building the car, I rented this little tiny crappy shop out in the middle of nowhere. When I moved in, someone had spray painted Walter on the wall, and like the first thing I put in there was the body, and I like kind of stood back and saw Walter above it, and I was like, oh, it's called Darth Walter, you know. And then it stuck. It's a Model A frame. It's swept 4 inches in the front, and it's Z'd 10 inches in the back. Bob was a huge influence on the stance and how the frame is built. It's got 47 Ford backing plates and brakes with Buick drums, 59 Buick drums. 49 Ford shoebox wheels, small bolt pattern, Lions hubcaps. It's a 59 Cadillac 390. It's 10.5 to 1. It's got a mild cam in it. And a Edelbrock 40 intake. Holly 94s, which I kind of obsessed with Holly 94s. I love them. A 350 transmission. Sort of obsessed with twin blue gauges. It's got 14 of them. Taillights are 53 Buick. One of my favorite things is out of Bob's dad's Roadster is how the pipes come out the rear pan, and I blatantly ripped that off. So the pipes come out the rear pan, and they're framed by 54 Buick reverse lights. The license plate frame is a Soutone Eldorado. 57 Ranchero rear end. Tires are 750 16s in the back and 600 16s in the front. I was sort of going for that almost Wiesnerish look on the car, like really huge tires, really little tiny car. It's a 53 Ford dash that's been sectioned and narrowed. It's a round dash, like the 53 Ford is very circular inside, so the dash flows into the doors. And that was a really weird thing until I found these 54 Victoria door pieces, because the Vicky doesn't have the hardtop. So it actually, I was able to find those pieces, and it was really easy to kind of section them a little and make them fit. The seats are from Barstools, from just a catalog. They're like $60 Barstool seats. Started this car, in my 20s. My whole thing was to build it on a budget. So the whole car, it was pretty much built by me in my garage. All the fabrication, everything. The paint is a single stage black paint. I shot it in my driveway. All the upholstery stuff is from Joann's Fabrics and Home Depot. One of the really weird details on the car, and it's something that show magazine cars from the little books, like the a la carte and stuff, is the ultimate contradiction, which is outside upholstery. It is my favorite thing on any car. So I wanted to make sure that I covered a lot of things with upholstery. So the first idea I had, and I kind of was solid right from the beginning, is I have to upholster the frame horns. And then from there, it kind of got out of control and did the steering box mount and the engine mounts, the firewall. The brake hoses are upholstered. The radiator hoses were upholstered. They're actually not on the car right now. The wheel wells are upholstered. Of course, the top. The inside of the trunk is upholstered. Like the U-bolts on the rear cross member have little upholstery jackets on it, and the inside of the wheels, even though there's hubcaps on it, there's little upholstery pieces between the wheels and the axles. Under the visor has some upholstery. And I probably would have gotten more carried away with it, but it takes a long time to do. And I think in total I have definitely less than 15 grand in this car, maybe even closer to 14, all said and done, which for a finished hot rod that people actually care about and want to look at is pretty good. It's pretty decent. I really wanted to build a nice, pretty show car, but I also want to drive the absolute piss out of it and make sure it gets plenty dirty and plenty used. And there's no possible way that any of this car would have even come to reality without very, very good friends Mark Ford, Bob Lead, Norm Jones, Piero DeLuca, my wife Cammie, of course, because she's amazing, and Mitch, because if it wasn't Mitch approved, it wouldn't have happened.
He really fell hard. Well, the Silver Bullet started as a concept of mine when I was about 26 years old. I had a couple of previous very rough dragsters, graduated from industrial design school and wanted to design the ultimate modified roadster. Made an absolute cold call to Chrysler. I said, I've got this concept, Mr. Wiley. Frank Wiley was the dean of Chrysler racing all the way through the Hemi era and so on. In fact, he was it. That's why they got where they were as far as Garlits and Red Wagon and all those other cars. So I called him. He says, well, 15 minutes next Tuesday afternoon. So I put on my high school graduation suit, did an illustration of the concept. The Silver Bullet lettering, I developed a logo, which is still used and still in the car. And this is the drawing. Took this over, and that was the grassroots beginning.
It's amazing.
Went over there, and he said, I really like this program. He said, we don't need any more Hemi exposure, because everybody you've ever heard of was running a Hemi. Mm-hmm. But he said, would you be interested in the 273? It's a good engine, and we don't have anybody helping us on it. I could obviously see it's that or nothing. So I went home. They shipped me an engine and all the parts we could ever use that they made. We started making this car out of fiberglass roadster body. Sculpted the body parts out of masonite and styling clay and Bondo, made molds. Bought a Schubeck dragster chassis made by Joe Schubeck, and finished the car off with a silver paint job. Somewhere along the line, I got the idea of calling it the Silver Bullet. I'm not sure why. Mm-hmm. But it does look like a bullet from a distance in the side view. So I said, yeah, that's great. Well, we ended up beating the Chevys with the 270. It's a terrific engine. We held the 1320 Drag News record for B-gas modified roadster at 142. And it was a stock bore 273, I mean, an honest bore 273. It wasn't even a cleanup on it. And it had a Dodge truck crank and so on. We ran that engine. 1966, we were part of the Dodge racing program then, okay? Each Monday you had to report, period, what you did that weekend for Dodge. How'd you perform, how many people were there, were you in a show, a car, what did you do? These were look at the names on here. Bobby Allison, Tiny Lund, Richard Petty, James Hilton, David Pearson. We were with these guys on this program, these various programs. Don Garlits, David Pearson ran out of gas, Petty blew a wheel, Stan Johnson, Silver Bullet, won Junior Gas Eliminator, unsupercharged. This was the third time out for the new car. And we got a full page there and a full page here in the Sunday paper.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. But it's the three of us in my garage. I mean, it was a garage car. It was, a two-car garage. That's it. We didn't have a shop then. With the paper, we did this Silver Bullet showing, the same weekend on today's men's section. See, that's what I want to repeat again, that kind of publicity. This went to the dragster. Take it to the art center. You guys that like drag racing, Tom Hoover, Speed Sports, Starfire, Telstar, Playboys, Houston, Platt, Prudhomme, Surfers, Freight Train, every name practically. Look at the names on there. It's really cool.
That's really crazy.
Wow. Yeah, all
the Torque Master,
a curve, and an ink pen, and doing all of these, which I just finished in January. Do all of these by hand, and when I did it originally, then I had to cut them out of vinyl, and stick them down. This time, bowing to technology, I took him over to the vinyl guy and had him print these. Showed it 1 or 2 years in some auto shows, did won almost every show with it, because part of their grading for winning is amount of handmade parts, and the whole car was handmade, from the lettering to the intakes, The intake manifold is of our own manufacture. We had them hand cast out of aluminum. When we built our own injection, we used Algon injection, adjustable nozzles. These are the original pencil drawings, and they're kind of faded up here. This is the top view and the side view of the fuel injection. And it's dated Johnson Automotive, 12/6/1965. And then we put a plate, we molded up 2 of these for double butterflies, and then welded them to a plate, surfaced it, and that's the injection that was on the car today. Put a boss on here to put the Algon fuel nozzles on. What we did was work around a butterfly shaft and butterflies off of a generator set, because we knew we couldn't make those. So we started those as a given, found the right size, and then designed the rest of the castings around that. That's what's on there now. So except for the pill and the bypass, all we had to do was just adjust the nozzles to preset. We had a fuel setting and a gas setting. We actually had, we could warm the engine up for fuel on gas and then just turn the nozzle, switch the pill, and run fuel. I ended up getting the block back.
Wow.
Because there's no numbers on it, which means it came out of Chrysler's back door without a VIN.
Wow.
Okay? And there are some other bosses and stuff that I cut off that I knew it was the engine, and somebody had stripped out the Thompson rods and pistons. Still has that ISKI cam in it. We replaced the pistons, cleaned everything up. It's the same engine after almost 50 years. And it will run some exhibition this summer, which is our plan. I took the body off part of one season, and we ran full load of nitro at 163, again with the 273, the dragster version of it.
Oh, wow.
When I took the body off and I made just a little body to see how this thing would run on fuel, and it ran $1 million on fuel. Well, at this time, they were starting to build some streamlined dragsters. And I obviously like roadsters, and I went, I'm going to build the ultimate roadster, but I don't want it to look like a dragster. Roadsters have grills, so I made up a grill to differentiate from dragsters. I put the headlights on just for show. We used it for the Chrysler shows. But if you look at today's Altereds, including that one, they all have a little T shell on it, right?
Yeah.
Why? I don't know why. And I've had so many comments on how beautiful a silver this is. And it's a 65 Cadillac color. And everything on the car is exactly the same. The lettering is exactly the same. The striping, 1/4-inch tape. I have several friends that are pinstripers, and they just shook their head and said, well, if that's the way it was, I won't bother you anymore, because they didn't like the tape idea. But it's a perfect restoration.
That's awesome.
That's a very interesting part of the story, and obviously none of this, we wouldn't be here today had not the story a happy ending. But in 1969, I was starting my own business. I had to sell the car to finance the startup. And the car was sold to a fellow in Canada who shipped it to Europe for a show series. Then it was lost for about almost 40 years, 30, 40 years. And a fellow at a swap meet found the center part of the body with the little rear window at a swap meet. A friend of his said, I think that's a part of a famous car. Because we had been in kind of every magazine there was, and it was famous at that time. So he recognized it by that window, put it on the internet. My friend Kurt saw it on the internet and said, well, that's Stan's car, a small part of Stan's car. And I corresponded with the fellow in Canada then, showing him and sending him all the data I had as far as construction and all the pieces he should be looking for to complete the puzzle for him. Well, he looked for about 10 years, found parts in the darndest places. And a friend of his bought an old race trailer, and parts of this were in it. He bought the trailer, but he recognized those as the parts from the picture, okay? And we negotiated back and forth for years, and then the last 4 years, I really started hounding him a bit as to whether he's going to get the car done. And my 2 partners had already passed away, and I said, I'll get it done in a year. He said, really? And I said, yeah, I'll get it done in a year, because I've got the inspiration that he doesn't have. We got it back a year ago last November, in 12, and I worked on it last year really intensely because there was so much to be done in handmade and so on. And all of this had to be made over again. A new narrowed rear end. We didn't get it back. All the pedals, everything that shines in here is made over. The drive shaft, I made another steering wheel. All of that was missing, but this is just like the original steering wheel. I had wood, hand grips on it, and seat and all the other stuff. The handbrake, the pedal with the foot return. It's a 3-speed Dodge truck transmission. And then this didn't come back, so I made a mold of this and made a new canopy. But it's dead nuts. You had the flare around the push bar. Mm-hmm. The push bar is a trailer hitch ball welded up and then filed smooth in there on a piece of tubing. I finished it up a week before the Grand National Roadster show, and I think a lot of us, I'm sure, always wanted to have a car in the Grand National show. Well, what a perfect, I was actually invited at that point, which is even better than pleading, and built a sign and finished the car a week before we had it trucked out to Pomona. And it was a big hit in the show. We're going to have at least one or more magazine covers and articles and some sponsors in the car. Will once again be as well known as it was the first time around in the mid-60s. Yeah.
That's when your dad joined.
Yeah.
71.
Oh, this is the list that you really want. Bob Merck right here.
Yeah.
32 Ford Roadster.
Yeah. That's awesome.
There's another one.
60 Chevy. This was his El Camino. Right, here's the other one. Here's the Roadster. Yeah, he had 3. That was probably my mom's 38 Cabriolet.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
The 38 Ford, nose decked.
Wow.
These are all the entry forms for some of the early 70s car shows that Stan would put on. And my dad would have painted several of these cars and several of the bikes, and then he always had 2 or 3 cars in it. And we just found his entry forms. So it's pretty cool to see.